Have you finished packing? Please hurry up. We plan to renovate your room after you leave. Without offering any help, the eldest son's wife urged us to hurry. She seemed ecstatic about finally making this house her own. She really doesn't know anything, does she? I glanced at my husband, who silently gestured for me to stop and smiled gently at his brother's wife. Sorry for the delay. We'll be out by tomorrow. Since there will be workers around, it's best if you and Emily stay in your room. Since we were leaving behind the shared furniture and appliances, our belongings were mostly just bedding and a few dressers. It probably wouldn't take more than 30 minutes to move everything out. The next day came. The final farewell was much more straightforward than I expected. Well, we're off then. Yeah, see you. Take care. There were no words of apology or gratitude. Without even a proper send-off, the eldest son and his wife just glanced at us while lounging in the living room. With such an attitude from them, there was no need for us to be overly courteous either. However, as we silently got into the taxi, I couldn't help but think about the cat they were leaving behind. Could Emily take care of it properly? Would she be able to love and care for it adequately? As I watched our home fade into the distance through the taxi window, I had a sudden thought and took out my phone to call someone. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense kicking in. My name is Karen, 64 years old. My husband, John, is a year older than me, and we've been married for 35 years. We've had a very harmonious relationship without any major conflicts. John worked for a multinational company and was usually very busy, but he always made time for the family. This year, John happily retired, and I was looking forward to spending more quality time together. However, it seems I was the only one excited about his retirement, as I recently realized. It was our eldest son, Robert, and his wife, Emily, who showed dissatisfaction. They've been living with us for about a year, ever since they got married. The cohabitation was at Emily's request. She liked the convenience of our home being close to the station for commuting and shopping. We wanted to give the newlyweds some space, but in the end, we were persuaded to let them stay with us. Never did I imagine it would lead to this situation. What on earth are you thinking? It happened about 2 months after John retired. Returning from shopping, I was stopped in my tracks by the sound of John's angry voice. In the living room, John was scolding Robert, who was sitting on the sofa. It was rare for my usually calm husband to be this furious. What's going on? I asked, and John turned to me with a deep sigh. Robert was rummaging through my bag and took money from my wallet. What? He seems to be short on cash after losing big at the Kentucky Derby recently. With that, John grabbed a few bills and his wallet from Robert's hand. It was definitely John's wallet. I had given it to him on our 25th wedding anniversary, so there was no mistake. The fact that it was in Robert's hand along with the money was undeniable proof of what John said. Robert. I thought you quit gambling. You promised never to do it again after that big loss last time. So why? Whether he heard me or not, Robert continued watching TV without replying. He often ignored conversations that didn't interest him or that involved reprimands. It seemed he truly didn't hear, as he frequently forgot things told to him verbally. This time was no different. No matter how much I pleaded, it had no effect. But I had a hunch about why he had started gambling again. It had to be Emily. Robert never had an interest in gambling before. He was a typical, honest office worker, never involved in any criminal activities like stealing from someone's wallet or shoplifting. If asked what had drastically changed Robert, I would undoubtedly say it was meeting his wife. Emily was a lively and energetic woman. When they were introduced, I hoped she would bring out the best in my introverted son. But at that time, I didn't know. I didn't know she was an avid gambler with a reckless approach to money. Your mother is talking to you. How about responding? Fed up with Robert's attitude, John turned off the TV. Finally, Robert spoke. Shut up. I gave it back, so stop whining. Why are you making such a big deal over a couple of bills? What? Besides, I was shocked at how little cash was in it. Dad, you've really fallen, haven't you? Well, I retired, so that's to be expected. Pathetic. With that, Robert walked out of the living room. I tried to stop him, but John held me back. It's partly my fault for leaving my bag out. And repeatedly scolding him will only backfire. But his attitude is just too much. It was horrible. Too horrible. John never flaunted his role as the family's breadwinner, but it was undeniable that we lived comfortably because of him. That included Robert and Emily. Not only did they save on rent, but they always had excuses for not contributing to living expenses, which John mostly covered. Instead of showing respect, they insulted him. I couldn't help but feel anger not only towards Robert but also towards Emily, who had reintroduced him to gambling. A few days later, still troubled, I decided to confront Emily. Robert seems to be struggling with money lately. Do you know anything about it? Oh, he lost big at the Kentucky Derby, didn't he? You knew? Yeah. I invited him to go with me. Just as I thought. Robert had started gambling again because of Emily. Why would you do that? Robert was trying to quit. Was he? I didn't know that. Please, Emily. Don't invite Robert to gamble anymore. If this continues, it will cause problems for you too, won't it? We just do what we want with our own earnings, so it's not a problem. I was taken aback by her unexpected response. Indeed, both Robert and Emily worked and earned their own money, and with no worries about food, clothing, or shelter. They were free to spend it as they pleased. But still. But you're married. You might have children someday, and for your future. We decided not to have kids. We don't want to be tied down and unable to do what we like because of child rearing. Her response shocked me once again. There was too much information to process. But in a way, it made sense. The financial needs drastically differ if you have children. That's why their money management was so lax. However, even without children, a couple should support each other. But as a couple, you should help each other in tough times. Robert is struggling right now. Then why don't you help him out? You're his parents. Besides, you guys are well off. Oh, but now you're on a pension, right? But there must be some retirement savings? John's company was multinational, so there's no pension. Really? That's disappointing. I thought you'd have a hefty pension. No, there isn't. So, please handle Robert's issues between yourselves. Honestly, supporting your living expenses is already quite a burden. And we can't afford more. Well, that's Robert's fault for losing. You can't blame me for that. But anyway, we can't help right now. Without securing any promise of support for Robert, I was practically chased out of their room. A week passed with Robert's money troubles unresolved. If he was desperate enough to steal from his parents' wallets, wasn't it a sign of real desperation? Shouldn't we help him before he turns to crime? John and I discussed it repeatedly, but he insisted this is the result of spoiling him. Now is the time to be tough for the future. In the end, I had to agree. At least we were providing meals in the morning and evening, and he had a commuter pass. He just needed to make it to the next payday. But our brief sense of relief was shattered by an unexpected turn of events. It was a weekend night. After finishing dinner, we were relaxing in the living room. Ding dong. It was unusual to have visitors at this hour, so I went to the door with some curiosity. As I opened it, I was surprised to see Emily standing there. She was holding a cardboard box in both hands, unable to open the door herself. What's this about? What's in the box? I took the box from her, and the rustling sound made me gasp. As I opened the box, I saw a pair of eyes staring back at me. It was a cat. Isn't it cute? I found it abandoned on my way home. Emily looked pleased with herself, but I quickly remembered the gravity of the situation and called out to the living room. John. Go to the bedroom and close the door immediately. I closed the box and handed it back to Emily. Emily, I'm sorry, but we can't keep a cat here. What? Why not? I explained to Emily that John had a severe cat allergy. Exposure to cat saliva caused skin inflammation, and inhaling fur or dander triggered asthma-like attacks. Once, when Robert visited a friend with a cat and came back covered in fur, John had an attack and had to be taken to the hospital. I reminded her that this allergy had been one of the conditions we discussed when she moved in. So you're saying I should take it back out there? In this cold? It will die. I was at a loss for words at Emily's remark. I don't dislike cats. So, telling her to put the cat back out in the cold was something I couldn't bring myself to say. But I couldn't risk John's health either. All right. The cat can stay in your room for one night. But just one night. Tomorrow, we'll contact the animal shelter to have it taken in. At least the shelter would temporarily care for the cat. Emily reluctantly agreed to my suggestion. I informed John and Robert about the arrangement, and we agreed the cat would stay in their room for the night. However, things didn't go as planned. The next morning, my eldest son and his wife changed their minds and said, "We will keep the cat." Emily, that's not what we agreed on. But we really want to keep it. It's so cute. Why can't we? Because John is allergic. If he doesn't touch it, it'll be fine. We'll take care of it. You're both at work during the day. Who will look after it then? Can't you do it, Karen? I can't, and that's why I'm saying no. How heartless. I didn't know you were so cold. You can't even help a tiny, cute cat. Do you know that shelters often end up euthanizing animals? You're just looking out for yourselves, ignoring any sacrifice needed. Do you know what people call folks like you? Old nuisances. What? We don't need old nuisances. If we can't keep the cat, you should leave immediately. Before I could argue, Robert continued. It's a good time for you to consider moving to a retirement home. You're old enough, and we have no intention of taking care of you. Besides, you're not earning anymore. That's enough, you two. All right. John, who had been silently listening, suddenly interrupted me. He wore a mask and gloves since the previous night's incident and kept his distance from Robert and Emily. I felt sorry for making him uncomfortable in his own home. I can't keep a cat because of my allergy. So we'll go along with your suggestion and leave. John. As Robert said, it might be a good time to consider a retirement home. John looked at me. I understood his intention, so I kept quiet. To Robert and Emily, it seemed like we had given up. Their attitude became more triumphant. Don't worry about the house. We'll take good care of it. But keep all the utilities and ownership in your name. It's too much hassle to change. Retirement homes are expensive, but you need to manage that yourselves. We're not helping. Their relief and joy at our compliance were clear. This must be their true nature. Maybe Emily had planned this outcome all along by bringing the cat. We were fooled by her scheme. Over the next week, I prepared for the move, taking care of John. Robert and Emily continued to make snide remarks, but they kept the cat in their room. Realizing it would be problematic if John fell ill before we left. Have you finished packing? Please hurry up. We're planning to renovate your room after you leave. Without offering any help, Emily urged us to hurry. She seemed ecstatic about finally making this house her own. She really doesn't know anything. I glanced at John, who silently gestured for me to stop and smiled gently at Emily. Sorry for the delay. We'll be out by tomorrow. Since there will be workers around, it's best if you and Emily stay in your room. Since we were leaving behind the shared furniture and appliances, our belongings were mostly just bedding and a few dressers. It probably wouldn't take more than 30 minutes to move everything out. The next day came. The final farewell was much more straightforward than I expected. Well, we're off then. Yeah, see you. Take care. There were no words of apology or gratitude. Without even a proper send-off, Robert and Emily just glanced at us while lounging in the living room. With such an attitude from them, there was no need for us to be overly courteous either. However, as we silently got into the taxi, I couldn't help but think about the cat they were leaving behind. Could Emily take care of it properly? Would she be able to love and care for it adequately? As I watched our home fade into the distance through the taxi window, I had a sudden thought and took out my phone to call someone. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense kicking in. Adjusting to life after the move was a bit unsettling, but it was mostly comfortable. After all, with 2 fewer housemates. Everything, from cooking to laundry, took half the effort, and I no longer had to worry about being considerate. I finally felt like I had regained the freedom I lost before Robert and Emily got married. One night, about a week after living like that, Emily called me. With John's approval, I answered the call. Emily's panicked voice blared through the receiver. "Karen. What's going on?" The power and gas in the house seemed to be off. It seemed she had just returned home. She was so flustered that she inadvertently switched to a video call. All I could see was the beam of a flashlight moving around in a dark room, unable to make out Emily's expression. "Well, I canceled the services, so it's no wonder they're off." "What? What do you mean canceled? Is this some kind of prank? Are you getting back at us for kicking you out?" "Emily, calm down. Is Robert there with you?" John gently asked, and Emily's tone softened a bit as she replied, "He just got home." Robert, seeing the dark house, was also in a mild panic, but after they calmed down, John revealed the truth. "The house has been sold. The buyer has been found, and the handover date is soon. So, we canceled all the utilities." "A sale? We weren't told about this. How could you make such arrangements without telling us?" I interjected in exasperation at my daughter-in-law, who was indignant and couldn't believe what her husband was saying. I informed Robert about everything. The sale, the handover date, and the progress along the way. Clearly, Robert hadn't communicated any of this to Emily. Or perhaps, in his usual manner, he hadn't even remembered hearing it. Given all the meetings with the real estate agents and potential buyers over the past few months, the house had been quite busy. But Robert and Emily were rarely home during the day, so they must have missed it all. They had plenty of chances to notice, but they missed them all. "I assumed you would move out right after us. Haven't you started packing?" I asked innocently. Robert and Emily immediately began arguing. "It's your fault, I didn't know, I was deceived," and so on. Watching them bicker in the dark, illuminated only by a flashlight, was oddly amusing. But once they finished, they directed their anger back at us. "Even so, moving forward without your housemate's consent is too much. I don't remember agreeing to this." "Oh. But I did get a response from you. I asked if it was okay to sell the house, and you said, yeah, sure." In reality, it was a half-hearted response from Robert while he was watching TV, but it was still an answer. It's his fault for not paying attention. When I pointed this out, Robert was momentarily speechless, then shouted defiantly. "Fine. What should we do now?" "What do you mean, what should we do? Where are we supposed to live now? You must have arranged something for us, right?" John replied in a puzzled tone, "Why?" My eldest son froze and said, "Ha," in response. "You kicked us out. Why would we arrange a place for you?" "Well, because even if we hadn't kicked you out, you were planning to leave anyway, right? So, we're not to blame. And since you decided to sell the house, you should consider the impact on us. Yeah, rental properties pay relocation fees, right? So, give us some money. You made a lot from the sale, didn't you? A rental house, huh? In that case, before paying the relocation fee, you should pay the rent for the time you stayed in that house. And we also covered your living expenses. So, let's add that up. Considering a year of rent and living expenses, it comes to about $10,000. Can you pay that right now?" Robert and Emily fell silent. Given Robert's financial troubles, they likely couldn't afford it. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, Robert tried to appease us. Right. We should pay you first, but we're a bit short right now. So, how about we live together again? Yes, please tell us where you moved. We'll join you there." They hadn't cared about our new place when we left. I dismissed their plea, "That's impossible. We can't live with a cat." "Wasn't that the reason you kicked us out?" "We'll get rid of the cat. Just let us stay." Those extremely selfish words made me truly feel sorry for the cat. It was clear that to my eldest son and his wife, the cat was nothing more than a tool to drive us out of the house. "You said we ignored sacrifices for our comfort, but it's you who are willing to sacrifice anything for your convenience. The term old nuisances fits you better. When their parting words to us were thrown back at them, my daughter-in-law was left speechless and began to cry. But we no longer felt any obligation to be swayed by her tears. John and I moved into a senior living community, so you can't join us. You suggested it, remember? It's very comfortable. We'll live happily here. Don't worry about us. I ended the call. All we heard were their sobs. We never received an apology. Robert and Emily soon left the house. Without savings, they both declared bankruptcy and now live in public housing. We learned this from Sarah, our friendly neighbor, when we returned to clean the house. According to Sarah, my eldest son and his wife had a hard time packing their belongings in a house without electricity. As expected, they left the cat behind when they moved. Thankfully, I had asked Sarah to keep an eye on the cat, so it now lives with her. I offered to help find a new home for the cat, but Sarah had grown attached and decided to keep it. Surprisingly, Robert and Emily didn't divorce. Perhaps they're well-matched. They might be hoping for John's inheritance, but we've chosen a high-cost senior community, so there won't be much left. John and I finally achieved a truly peaceful life together. The senior community offers many services, including a gym, karaoke, and hot springs. We enjoy 3 freshly prepared meals a day, and we can go out or travel as we please. Best of all, we have many friends here. We plan to enjoy this second phase of our lives together, making new friends and cherishing our time.